Who's Hamlet the Dane?
That's Joel.
Great. All right, well, good, man. First try.
It's Joelski.
That is Joel? So I wonder then who Fleck is.
Yeah, me.
I hope that's my friend Tony.
Maybe.
Isn't it? I think you're right. It's funny how everyone has a different name, but their real name. All right, so we're on. We're moving. We're good. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well, Brian. How are you?
Good. How's your day?
Delicious.
Yeah?
Yeah, I walked about 14 miles today.
Really? Is that more than usual?
Yeah, I'd say the average is probably 8 to 10. Today was a little longer. I did 2 walks. It's so nice out. I'd like to spend the whole day outside.
I've been kind of itching to get out in the mountains and walk around. It's been a while for me. Although I get out and walk. We have the wetlands out here. It's pretty nice. Tonight's topic.
Yes.
Seedtime and Harvest. Calling it the law of seedtime and harvest doesn't necessarily, I don't know that it's has to be a law. It's described as that often. I think it's a truth. I definitely think it's a truth, whether it's a law or not. And I think the specific reference that I draw upon is when I believe it's in Genesis in the Bible where it says, as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, winter and summer, I believe, and dark or day and night shall never cease. Pretty much says it like that, I think. And then there's a lot of cool stuff that I want to talk about tonight. I mean, I think it's a really great topic, I think it applies, whether you call it a law, whether you call it a rule, whether you call it a truth, whether you call it an idea, whatever you want to call it, whatever you perceive it to be. I think it applies to, you can almost apply it to every area of life, of not just life, of what you observe, of what's around you, of what's in you. I think you can sort of make the case that this applies, and it's a pretty awesome thing to ponder. I've been pondering all week myself. So that's I think what if we could try to kick it off with maybe what you think about that when you hear the term seed time and harvest, and then we'll go from there. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a great story. It's one of my favorites about a farmer, and it really, to me, encapsulates the whole seed time and harvest for me. So I can share that story with you if you'd like.
Well, before we do that, just tell me like you, Jonathan Crouch, besides the story, when you hear, even my description of it, what comes to mind when you just hear the term? Besides, we'll get into the story for sure because I got some too. But
well, I think seeds are thoughts. Time is the way in which we notice the effect of the thought as it ripples through the time-space continuum. And harvest is the direct experience we have of the thoughts that we've selected to drop into our consciousness.
That's good. It's interesting that you brought it up like that. Like, I want to talk about that too. I have some things to say in my sort of definitions. I would say instead of thoughts, I'd say words, but also thoughts as well. But when I first looked it up, I was thinking the same thing: seed, time, harvest. Like there are 3 things, but it actually, well, at least in the Bible anyways, it says seed time is one word. It's seed time and harvest. But I never looked at it like that. And I'm not sure how much that changes what I think about it all. But I always did the same thing. I always thought seed, then time, then harvest. Like it's 3 distinct principles. And I think it is. I mean, I think it applies. But it's just interesting, something that just popped out to me because we're doing this again, right? We're doing this, and I was like, I really want to think about it. I really want to think it through and be prepared when we're talking, so that we're not just sitting here, twiddling our thumbs, right? But tell your story. Tell your story, my friend.
Okay. There once was a farmer, and he went out to plant his seed in the ground. But before he went to plant the seed, he selected each seed very carefully. All the other farmers rushed out because they thought, oh, look, it's time for the planting to begin. Everything is perfect. The conditions are just right. You must hurry up and plant. And they brought whatever seeds they could get and went out and spread them on the ground and began their busy work of doing what they had to do. They would have their harvest. But the wise farmer waited, and while others laughed at him, he carefully selected each seed. He waited until he could hold it in his hand and say, ooh, I like the vibration of this seed. This feels very good. Oh yes, I can see the beautiful plant that is going to arise from this. The fruit of this will be the sweetest in the valley. And he gathered his seeds, and he paid no attention to the passing dates on the calendar. He paid no attention to the changing weather conditions. He knew that when the time was right, the seed would be planted, and from it would burst forth the flowers of those seeds. He knew it. He gave no thought to the opinions of his colleagues, and he enjoyed the process of loving the seeds that he was making his own. Then the farmer went out and cast the seed upon the soil of his farm, which is likened unto the soil of our awareness. He planted the seeds, and he tamped them down, and he nurtured them, and he watered them, and he cultivated them with a smile on his face. The neighbors' farmers, the other farmers, their crops were already sprouting from the ground, but he could care less, for he knew that the seeds would bring him an eternal harvest, and they would not burst forth from the soil and create mediocre fruit and then die, for he had selected seeds that would constantly bring forth in season the best fruits. So he loved them, and he nurtured them, and he cultivated them. Long after the other farmers had grown weary and tired and had experienced drought, the seeds that brought forth fruit where insects would come and destroy them and would not be purchased by people in the marketplace, this wise farmer, became the greatest farmer in the entire valley. People would come from all the world to bite and take and nibble of the fruit that came from his garden. Yet the farmer merely delighted in continually loving and nurturing these seeds and cultivating the soil in which they were planted daily. He never took his consciousness away from his perfect union with those seeds. He never once forgot that he was the one that created his farm as a direct result of his careful selection of which seeds he would plant in his soil. And while others marveled at his good fortune, and while others were jealous of his good luck, the farmer always knew no magic was involved. That is the story. I love it.
What are we to glean from that?
Whatever you want. What did you glean? What did you hear?
It's a good story. Sounds great. I guess I question like how he knew what good seeds were. I guess that was what was coming to my mind. How would he determine what a good seed is, and then how did he know it would be planted? Because he knew he was going to plant it. I guess, right? That was what was coming to my mind. But I mean, other than that, it's a good story.
So do you feel like in your day-to-day when you're thinking a thought that you're really enjoying and it's delicious thought and you really enjoy thinking it and you enjoy sharing that thought with other people, that would to me be the good seed.
Yeah, I get it. If you determine that thoughts are seeds, and that's great. Are you deciding so then you're like taking only the good thoughts and planting those, and then the thoughts that aren't so good, you're just putting them somewhere else or getting rid of them, or
just let them be. They're not going in the ground of your consciousness.
So then that's good. So the ground is the consciousness. The seed is a thought.
Yes.
So that brings me to my story, maybe, right?
Okay.
So I wanted to talk about the parable of the sower, and I think we can unpack that. And in my thinking about it, I think it works with all the stuff you're saying, as well as the stuff I'm probably going to say. That's my thinking, and I can't think for you or speak for you. But so that parable is interesting because whether you agree with the Bible or not, it's in the 3 different Gospels, and it pretty much says it the same way, and it's in red letters, which means that to most that Jesus wrote or said it. Whether he did or not, it's not really important to exactly what I'm saying here. I think I'm saying all that to just set it up to say, like, for some reason, it seems important to me. And it's very dynamic. It's a very great story. And then he also explains it in all 3 Gospels. He explains that parable, which he didn't always do, which I think is interesting. And then one other thing that I think makes it seem quite important is that you often hear Jesus, or you often read where it says that he said, "He who has ear to hear, hear." And I used to always look at that and I think, well, why would he say that sometimes? He must really want us to hear that, or whatever. And I studied that one time, and I think it was like 8 out of the 10 times he said it was referring to this principle. It's interesting, makes you again feel like, hey, there's something here. And so I got into that portion of Scripture quite heavily one night after a church service, and I had always heard it preached that, or taught that, you sow and you reap what you sow, which is also something we could talk about too. I think people defer to this principle in that regard as well, reaping what you sow. But that's for maybe later in the talk here. So the parable of the sower goes on to talk about a sower who sows a seed and sows it into different grounds and basically reaps a harvest kind of depending on those grounds, right? That's the gist of the story without it exactly. So that's often taught as like a prosperity verse, or like, hey, if you sow, give me your money, ladies and gentlemen. And if you sow $10 today and you're really good and you're good, this is good ground, believe it or not, this is good ground. And you're going to, this is the 100-fold ground or whatever, 1,000-fold, right? Whatever, let's make it up. And, this is how you often hear it taught. I subscribed to that just sort of blindly, sort of believed it, and at this point I'm not sitting here trying to disprove it or anything, but what I want to say is this, is I read it for myself. I just read it. I read it and I went to God. I went to Jesus and I said, what does this mean, right? Like, this is what I did. And I thought, what does this mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And I read it for what it was. And what caught my attention was that when he was explaining it, he said the sower sowed the word. And I thought, so, okay. Again, whether you believe any of this or not, that's not really relevant, that relevant. But he says the sower sowed the word. So I looked at it and I said, okay, there's a sower who goes out to sow. So I read it and so, okay, so if the seed is the word, who's the sower, And then I started looking at it and I think, okay, the Bible talks about Jesus being the Word of God in the flesh. So I thought, well, maybe he talking about God being the sower and Jesus being the Word, the seed, right? This is how I looked at it, and this is my honest. I love this too, because to me it was different. It was a different look at it, and then I started looking at the grounds, thinking, well, what did he sow it into? What's the ground then, And is that the earth? Is that me? And I took it as me. I thought if he sowed Jesus, I accepted him as the word. So then how am I any kind of return at all? What kind of return am I, right? And this is how I'm thinking it. And at the end, I thought, I would desire to be the 100-fold return or the best return on the seed. I think we desire the best harvest when we plant a seed, right? And then it just occurred to me, I'm like, how in the world could I ever be a 100-fold return on that seed? And it blessed me, John. It blessed me. At that moment, I was in tears. I was alone in my car, and I was in tears because I thought, me, little old me, God loves me that much that he could see me as that he could see me as a 100-fold return. Regardless if you believe in all this, again, this is what he was showing me. I hadn't heard it taught that way. I don't know that I have heard it taught that way to this day. But that was something that really blessed me, made me feel more loved than anything. So there's my story. I got a lot more to say about all that, but that's how I've looked at that, and I just think it's beautiful, and it just makes me think there's so much in the Bible that's beautiful. Again, believe it or not, take it for at its word or not. There's just so much there. And I was thinking about it today, just sitting here quiet. Whether you like it or not, it shows us the human experience. It's like it shows us, I think. It does what you do, just in my opinion, sort of flawlessly. I mean, touche. What do you say, John?
Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate all of that. It is our journey through cause and effect of experience. It is we're each exploring what it means to have relationship with God, relationship with each other, how much of an effect others can, should, are allowed to have on us. And you know where I am. You don't have an effect on me unless I decide you do. And that goes for God himself. When he Seedtime and Harvest to me is he was sitting, she is sitting in this beautiful, extravagant awareness, and he had the thought of me, and there I was. And, and I exist within his brilliant love, and then I get to explore the vastness, the infiniteness of God and see what it's like from a quadrillion different perspectives. And that's what I love about the whole thing, is that I'm undefiled and unaffected by anything or anyone. I'm given full power to choose. So I decide what seeds I'm going to sow into my consciousness, and then I reap them immediately and continuously.
That's great. Do you think there's other types of seeds in ground other than that?
No.
You can't even get yourself to think that way? Like, you think that's impossible? Like, because I'm saying that, like, right? So you think what I'm saying's...
There's consciousness.
Not possible.
Well, I'm just saying there's consciousness, and everything's possible in consciousness. Consciousness is the ground of your being, and you sow seeds into the ground of your being, and you experience them, called thoughts.
That's
and then
great.
Your thoughts becomes words, and your words are a feeling, a vibration.
Yeah, I get it, but that didn't so much answer the question that I was asking, I don't think. But that's okay. So I see words. I feel like in our existence, that's the most obvious seed. I mean, it's just they go out. My words leave my mouth. They don't come back. They go somewhere. When they go out, they go in your ears. Like I was just thinking about it. I was like, okay, maybe my mouth's a sower and John's ears are the harvest, because you're harvesting my words, my friend. So they're going in your conscience, whether you like it or not. You don't have a block there. You don't have earplugs in.
I would disagree with you. I do have a block.
Well, then there's a block between where they go in and somewhere else. Then I guess that's cool.
I can hear your words, and I can hear the vibration that you're sharing with me. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to sow that into my own consciousness. I can be like, okay, this is what Brian's playing with, and I appreciate it. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm bringing it in. And I'm sure that's vice versa for you. You don't. Just because I say something, you're not like, oh yeah, I'm going to drop that into my consciousness.
Well, if we relate it to Seedtime and Harvest, still works, because I mean, you're okay. The harvest is you're not even letting it harvest. It's a seed. I mean, but you're just it's like a weed at that point, or it's maybe determined to be a bad seed, and you just say, like, if you go back to your story,
yeah,
and I say these words and they go in your ear, you have to determine whether you're going to plant them or not. I mean, based on that story, that's kind of what it was saying. You have all these thoughts, and because I hope at least my words provoke thoughts in you, and your thought, if nothing else, your thought is, I'm going to accept that or not. Maybe that's a thought.
Yeah, I mean, so let's contrast the wise farmer with the busy farmer. Busy farmers have already decided to be afraid, and they'll pick up any thought and throw it into the ground because they just want something. Some sort of stimulation, some sort of experience. It's better than nothing. The wise farmer has probably already played that game. So the wise farmer already knows that dropping in any seed into his consciousness is not what he wants anymore. So he's very particular about each seed. He holds each seed. So somebody says something to him, God will love you if, or something like that. Well, if you give me 5, I'll give you 20,000.
So those are seeds that are still in you haven't thrown those seeds out.
Well, I'm just offering you the seeds that people have seemed to.
Well, those I think those are seeds in you. because they come up
I
often.
don't cultivate those. I know
you haven't planted them or whatever, but they were planted in you.
No, see, I don't think I can be raped by my consciousness. Can be raped by someone's words. I don't ascribe to that.
Well, then why do you bring that up so often? Do you think?
Because that's what I was taught. These were the
so then it's somebody's words went in your brain and put those there. They didn't go in mine. I don't bring that up all the time.
Well, I'll let you then explain that conclusion for yourself.
It's not a conclusion. I'm hearing you, just like you asked me to do. I'm hearing you, and I hear those words often.
Yes, okay. I don't agree with those busy farmers who are trying to support their ministries by getting me to sow money into their ministry. It's called go get a job. If you want to do that, that's fine. You're all good to do that. You're just not going to get me to participate in that because I see no point in it. So all I'm saying is the difference between the wise farmer and the busy farmers is the busy farmers are coming from scarcity. The wise farmer is already coming from abundance. He knows he can take his time. He's relaxed. He knows it doesn't matter if it's raining or not raining, if the sun's out or not out. He knows that the seed itself is in of itself the potential that he knows when he places it in his consciousness, it's going to bear fruit.
Does that mean the ground doesn't matter? Does that mean the ground doesn't matter either?
Your consciousness is neutral. Your consciousness is like the soil of the ground. It's going to bring forth whatever you put into it.
But what if the ground is shallow, or what if there's no rain, or what if there's...
You're simply clogging it with shallowness and holding shallowness as the state of your consciousness. And because consciousness is like a mirror, it reflects back to you what you've held to be true. You literally experience your ground as tainted when it can't be in reality, but you experience it as such because it is perfectly neutral and able to reflect back to you exactly what you're doing.
I get a bit confused by all that because it doesn't, then maybe it's not a law, or maybe it's not a real truth because in and of itself, because to me, it says seed time and harvest, and it's relating to what a real farmer does, right? And we see that every day. That's why I think it's so cool to relate to. A farmer doesn't just put the seed in any ground and hope the ground does what it does because the seed's perfect. I mean, that doesn't happen in real life.
Well, that's not apples to apples to me. That's obviously physical ground is not the same as consciousness.
Well, let's maybe talk about for a little bit because that's really what the topic is. I mean, I get your perspective on it, but you're turning it into something else. It's not apples to apples.
Metaphysics, not physical Newtonian physics. I'm talking metaphysics. I'm talking about consciousness, thoughts, feelings, the direct experience, the very thing that allows you to have a feedback loop is consciousness itself. So what I sow is what I feed on. I eat my judgments. I eat my projections. But then I deceive myself and I say, oh, you're making me feel that way. And that's the busy farmer is saying my fruit sucks because you gave me crappy seeds. The wise farmer is going, my fruit is good because I only plant seeds that I know are good in and of themselves.
So you have a wise farmer and a busy farmer in your head, in your consciousness?
I'm saying I'm just contrasting the difference. You can be like the busy farmers. You can live from scarcity. You can say I need to survive and justify any means. Or you can live like a wise farmer and say, I'm only going to put into my consciousness the seeds that I want to eat. I'm only going to plant the kind of fruit, trees, thoughts that I want to experience.
Got it. I got it. I get it. But I still don't get how that relates to I guess you're right. It's not apples to apples. So I don't know. It's fruitless for me to try to compare the two, the law that in a realistic manner to a metaphysics manner. So I guess if we have to talk on two different planes, or we just talk on the metaphysic plane, and that's it. Because it sort of seems like that plane trumps the other plane. Like
they completely relate. So, a wise farmer on the physical plane, he's not going to buy a farm that has crappy ground. He knows the ground. I have friends that are farmers and friends that are really amazing farmers, and they know they can go out and put that dirt in their hands and sniff it and taste it, and they know whether or not it's time for that ground to rest.
They also rely on the rain, though, too, right? The climate, the outside circumstances, right?
Right. Well, nowadays it's not as important because you have other means. Like I have a guy near here, he's a master farmer. I can go into the front of his house and he has all kinds of fresh vegetables that he has a going rate. Every morning he harvests whatever's fresh, and I can go and buy that day what he harvested that day. And when you look at the guy, you can see this guy is you go look at his garden. You just walk around his garden. You're like, oh my God, he knows what he's doing, and he's not busy. He can go to the grocery store and get the food that he wants, but he is invested in mastering the art of using the soil and seed and his understanding of all the different conditions to allow a harvest to come forth that everyone around him purchases and enjoys, which allows him to buy more seeds. So for me, it's a perfect metaphor for the metaphysics, that the thoughts, because he's a kind of guy that when you meet him, you see he thinks, he has metaphysics. He thinks a certain way. There's a way that he looks at the ground, the way he honors it, the way he loves it, the way he loves the seed, the way he understands time. Like you said, seed, time, and harvest. He knows when to harvest. He knows when to wait. And I'm guessing he knows all that because he's made a ton of mistakes. And that to me is the difference between someone who's busy and someone who's wise. Is the person who's wise knows they've made mistakes and they've decided to learn from their mistakes.
Does the busy guy just keep making the same mistakes over and over?
Yes. Because he's a part of a consensus reality. What others think of him is more important than him knowing his own experience himself. He's still caught up, hypnotized, believing that other people are causing my experience. So I need to do whatever I can to give people something.
I got to be honest with you, John. It's hard to get. I mean, for me, it seems. I mean, I get some truths out of it. But I feel like I want to go back to like where you said that's the only way it could be, like, is thoughts and consciousness. Like the thoughts are the seeds and your consciousness is the ground, and there can't be any other thing. Like, I guess you got to that place, and you're coming from there and explaining all this, and that's fine. I just don't know how I could ever get there myself.
It's primary. You just see that before you speak, there's a thought. And before you think a thought, there's consciousness. And that's what you are.
But what I was saying, though, too, about words going in your consciousness and all that, and relating it to that law, it seems to make sense. Maybe, I guess it just doesn't. And that's fine.
If you're open to anyone's words, then they go into your consciousness. If you're open to whatever anyone says to you and you're just wondering, anything goes, sure. But for me, I'm not in that space.
Yeah, but then that goes back to like a kid with a parent too, right? Because you're sowing, they don't have any, they're just raw ground, like accepting whatever sort of seed comes at them. And so those seeds, they don't just get thrown out. I know that's a topic that often comes up. And that goes back to like, okay, well, that goes back to this law. They're still reaping a harvest. Even though, now you can choose as you get older to recognize them and say, okay, I'm not going to subscribe to them.
I'm hacking that.
But when you hear your words and you hear those things continually come up, there's something there, like, and I get it. I get what you've done with it, but I also think it sort of confirms what I'm saying and confirms that rule or that law pretty well. And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. I just feel like we have to be open to the fact that it's not just simply, okay, we've come to this conclusion, there can be no other thing. Because I feel like that's a dangerous place to be. Like, and it's fine to be there, but for me, it seems dangerous. You cut out. What did you say?
I said, I'm wondering what you think makes it dangerous.
Well, because it will cause you to, like I think we talked about this earlier today, dwell in the darkness, dwell on the, if you're only looking at one thing and you refuse to sort of see things in other perspectives, then, or you've already seen them and you've proved that they're not right, then I feel like that's limits you a little bit. Not you, but people in general. I mean, whoever is practicing it, I feel like that's a sort of limitation to what could be to experiencing more beautiful things. Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Well, you'd have to show me that in real time, because I can only relate it to my life. It's like the Wright brothers, People could be like, you're never going to get that off the ground, or Einstein, you're never going to figure out relativity and time. There's lots of people who have lots of things. That I think the difference between somebody who knows and somebody who has a theory is the guy who's willing to know is willing to find out for himself.
But that's good you bring that up, because Einstein especially, because I think that says exactly what I was just saying. Einstein had to keep looking at other perspectives, even though he was, you could argue that he was digging into truth maybe more than anybody, but he still had to see it. He couldn't draw the conclusion. If he drew the conclusion early on, he may have never discovered a theory of relativity, or he may have never done what he did. But so it sort of proves what I was just saying, I think, a little bit.
But he didn't draw a conclusion. It's the thing. That wasn't his nature. He wasn't drawing conclusions.
Yeah. But you did. That's the whole point. I'm saying you did.
Oh, I experimented and found out, like Einstein, directly for myself, that I create my experience, not anyone else. Therefore, I sow the seeds that I'm going to sow.
Okay.
Now, if you bring me some seeds and you're like, these are some really good seeds, I'm interested. But if you hand me a seed and you're like, this seed says that so-and-so has power over us, or we need to be very careful around this. Do
I say that? Do you hear that in my words, that somebody has power over us?
I hear a lot. You say I have to, or,
give me an example of one. Like,
well, he just did it a minute ago. Like, he didn't have to, we have to do these things.
What did like what though? What did I say I had to do? I'm not trying to catch anything. I just want to know. I want to unpack it for myself right now. Like,
well, to me, when a person is saying things like we have to, or this is what we're supposed to do, or this makes me feel this way, what I'm hearing is they're dropping in thoughts of external causes into their consciousness, and they're experiencing a sense of other things affecting them as if they are.
Well, I am doing that.
They haven't allowed them to.
But I am doing that.
You can allow others to affect you, but you don't have to. Nothing can make you feel a way that you haven't allowed it to make you feel.
Sure.
So if you say you make me feel this way, what I'm interpreting you saying is I have allowed this to affect me.
Okay.
And because I want to see what it's like. Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, I'm hearing if I rephrase it to make it sound different, it's still really saying the same thing, in my opinion. I mean, if I use the words different, I'm just not using the metaphysics terminology, but I'm hearing your words, I'm accepting your words, and I'm letting them affect me certain ways.
You're allowing them to, yes.
I'm allowing them to affect me in certain ways.
And that cause and effect relationship is fundamentally important, because when you say, I'm choosing to allow you to have effect on me, versus when you say, you're making me feel this way, what you're owning is your equality.
But aren't we saying the same thing? I'm just saying it. I'm saying you're making me, but really, I'm choosing. I understand I'm choosing. I do understand I'm choosing. I'm saying the word making, but I mean choosing. Because I get it.
You're a rare bird, because most people, when they say you make me feel this, believe that the other person is choosing for them their experience. So that's why I'm very ruthless about, if we're going to talk about these things, I'm going to say you have the power to choose, and therefore to create your experience as you would have it. Nobody else gets to decide your experience for you.
That's cool. I agree with you, John. I just don't. I feel like if I get that critical about my speech, then whatever it shows. I mean, I appreciate that you said that, and I do. I appreciate that you said it, but I do think it. Like I don't. I do think that I have the choice. I tend to think. Something that I was pondering about freedom. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, or maybe today, about Paul being in prison, and he says I'm free, but he's in prison, right? Yeah. Paul in the Bible, and I love that. I love that. I love it because to me, what that says is, I think it says what you say. I like what's around me doesn't matter. I'm free. Like I'm free. I choose to be free, and I feel that way most of the time. Or I choose to let that fester in my brain that I'm free, even though the midst of not from the worldly or whatever perspective, not looking free. I am free, and I can say that. So if I mince my words and they don't say exactly what you think, I think if you take that too far and think, well, he must be like everyone else, I guess. I mean, I don't know how you take it or hear it. But.
Yeah, because I don't choose to be free. I am free to choose whether or not I want to continuously cultivate that freedom that's intrinsic to my nature, or if I want to cultivate a sense of being bound. Right? Jesus says, whatever you bind is bound. Whatever you loosen is loosed. Whatever you say is free is free. Whatever you say is not free. You're literally generating your moment-to-moment experience.
Yeah. So
seeing, thought, time. Seeing
okay, what's Well, let's talk about this for a sec. What is the harvest? What do you think the harvest? Huh?
The experience.
So that's cool. So I think it's a parable of the fig tree where he says, he asks it like a question, Jesus does. Can a bad tree bear good fruit? Right. And can a good tree bear bad fruit?
Right.
What would you say to those questions?
Of course not. Every tree bears after its kind. Every thought bears the fruit of either fear or love. Every thought in your consciousness is either one of fear or it's one of love, and you'll know immediately which one you're choosing. Then you trick yourself and you deny that you chose fear. You say, no, that person did. And that's where we get into trouble.
Who tricks themselves? Do you trick yourself?
I've been tricking myself for 43 years. I've been in a state of utter denial for 43 years, pretending that God, the devil, people did something to me, and that I have to undo what they did to me. And I have to somehow persuade God to like me enough to let me come home. And I have to be powerful enough to put the devil in his place. And then humans, I just have to pray and intercede for them. And hopefully, if I do that for long enough, they'll all see the light and we'll finally be free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. That's what I've done to myself for 43 years, is believe thoughts that are not true.
How do you get free from that?
Just acknowledge what I did.
When do you get free? When do you get free from it?
When you forgive, because forgiveness is healing. Forgiveness is the choice to love. To forgive another person is to forgive yourself.
How do you stay free from it? How do you stay free?
Well, Jesus said, forgive 70 times, 7 times a day. How many times would we forgive? Up to 70 times 7. So that's 490 times per day that you have the opportunity to forgive if you're going to follow that, literally. So for me, forgiveness is the very act of choosing differently, to say, oh, I've been planting these seeds of fear in my consciousness. That's why I'm judging. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to forgive. I forgive my dad what he did. The tree that I planted in my garden that's sucking up all the nutrients and all my life force, I now watch it wither and die because I thought I was supposed to grow it in my consciousness so I could have a relationship with my dad. Well, I don't. Everything that he told me as a kid that I can find out if it was true, I can find out if it's true or not in my own direct experience of holding what he told me was true and noticing how I experience it. And if I experience fear or sadness or anger, then I know this is not a good thought. This is not a thought of love. This is a thought of fear.
Do you think you can be as the term they say, delivered from that permanently? Like, or do you just
Absolutely.
constantly have to be forgiving? Is the only way to be free to continually forgive the same thing? Like,
well, eventually you won't be forgiving anymore because you won't be judging anymore.
so it's a process.
Absolutely, and there's
no matter who you are.
Absolutely, and you can get to a point where you are free completely of judgment.
I believe
and
that.
You're not bothered by what people are doing to themselves because you know they're free to do whatever they want to themselves.
It's good.
You're just doing what you want to do. You're just sowing the seeds of love.
What do you think Jesus meant when he said the sower sows the word, when he was explaining the parable? What do you think he meant by that? I mean, I assume you meant it, he was talking about thoughts. But
yes.
Why wouldn't he say? Why wouldn't he refer to that? Because it doesn't look like he is. You know, like maybe the text is wrong or whatever. But
well, we don't. You know, if you saw on the large scale what he was doing in that entire culture and region for 3 years, he was literally unearthing all of the lies of the entire culture was built on. Both the Romans and the Jewish culture was built on. He was constantly exposing the fallacy of the religious ideology of the time. He was showing the fear and the control behind the views of God and of Caesar. He showed everyone the freedom that we have to choose, to allow ourselves to recognize how loved we are, and therefore how free we are to not have to worship God, to not have to offer blood sacrifice.
All of it up to that point, I think he did point at worshiping God, though. So you can throw that one in there, Crouch. You know, because the rest of it was lining up pretty darn good until you got to that part. But that's okay.
But how did he worship God?
In spirit and in truth.
But how did he? What specifically way do you see Jesus singing songs to God?
By acknowledging Him, and he didn't. There was nothing that he did that the Father didn't do.
But what specifically did you see him do?
Everything. In that regard, everything.
Well, does it say in the New Testament that, he went Sunday morning and he sang songs and he sang?
But that's a different subject.
Well, that to me is what most people consider worship.
We're not talking about most people.
Worship is communion.
We're not talking about most people, though. We're talking about Jesus. That was the question.
The only real authority on Jesus is Jesus himself. I don't claim to be an authority.
Well, you asked me where he's doing it, and I answered. And I don't think you liked the answer, but
I don't think it's a clear answer. I think what Jesus did is when you see his prayers, you see him in communion with the Father. He's in communion in consciousness. He's aware of, I am created as God created me to be. I am free. I and my Father are one is now the way in which he has decided to create only as he was created, as a extension of love. So he creates and chooses only love. How does he do that? He forgives. He forgives and he forgives and he forgives. And when anyone brings a sin to him, he says, look, you're forgiven. And some people get very upset with him for saying that, because who does he think he is that he can tell somebody they're forgiven? Only God can forgive. Well, here's the problem, Pharisee. God doesn't forgive because God doesn't judge. Forgiveness is what we do, not what God does. And if you want to know God, then you forgive yourself. And it's that simple to me.
Did Jesus have to forgive himself?
Of course.
How do you? I don't know that I see that.
Because to forgive others is to forgive yourself. We're not separate. We are one. We are joined together.
But there again, that you have to determine that you're the same as Jesus, and that's where we would differ.
Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.
Yes, but Jesus did know what he did. Did know what he was doing. Because why? He did nothing but what the Father did.
God, why have you forsaken me? That's literally what he said.
So let's go back to the question. Why do you think he said the sower sows the word? And why does you think it says that, why did he say things like, I am the way, the truth, and the life? Why did he say things like
For the reason that we say them, Brian.
What?
For the same reason that we say them.
I don't say that.
I say that all the time.
Well, you do, but most people don't.
Well, as we know, I'm not most people.
Hey, look, sounds like earlier today, John. I love you, man.
You keep telling yourself that.
Okay, so let me tell you what my precious young daughter said. Here's a young brain, right? And I asked her, what do you think when you hear this Seedtime and Harvest?
Yes.
And this has nothing really even to do with what we just said, I don't think. Maybe it does. We'll make sure we can make the case. But I said, she said, well, what is it? I said, well, it's referring, like, I related it to like a farmer sowing a seed and they get a harvest, And I said, so it's a law. It's a law the Bible talks about. That was it. I said, what do you think about that? Because I'm going to do this thing with John on Sunday. And she said, well, I think, it was very honest. She says, I think that it means like, well, there's like change. I'm like, wow. Cool, because I didn't. I go, okay, what do you mean? She goes, well, like when you plant a seed and then you get the harvest, then there's change. You can have a different farm or a different crop or whatever it is. I thought, wow, that's really cool. I said, you know what? I said, I wasn't looking at it like that, but I said, I guess that makes sense, And this is an innocent young mind, probably influenced by things I've said before, how she was raised, of course, right? But pretty cool nonetheless. I mean, it was. I just sort of took it like, wow, that's a really cool answer. Thank you. But I asked her and her friends today when we were at the pool, can a bad tree bear good fruit, and can a good tree bear bad fruit? And they look at you like, I go, there's no right answer. I told them. So then they start pondering it all, like, well, yeah, a good tree can bear bad fruit, because what if the fruit's rotten? I'm like, well, I don't know. Did it fall off the tree? Did a bug get to it? But it was just a fun exercise, right? Nonetheless, but I think that what I got from both exchanges, was that's what it's about. To me, that's what a lot of it's about, is like that there often isn't a right answer. But to get your mind to think for itself is a beautiful thing. And that brings me back to really the Bible as a whole, every bit of it. You read it. I mean, even the genealogies and stuff, and you just think, what does this mean? Like, why did so-and-so beget so-and-so, and it says this about him, but not this about him? And I think when you ask the questions it brings so much out. It shows you sort of, it's like a mirror in a lot of ways. Like, it shows you where it's in you, Because I sit there and I read, sometimes I'm like, why do those knuckleheads do that? They do that over and over and over again. I'm like, why? And then I read it, and then I ponder it. And it's just beautiful to me. It really is. Like, it doesn't have to be judgment. It's judgment if you let it be judgment. I mean, it is. I think that's a lot. This sounds just like what you say to my ears all the time. And I guess you can apply that to anything, really. It doesn't have to just be the Bible. But I guess if I go back to what we started this conversation with, it's in there more than most things. And it says that he who has ear to hear, he explains it. I mean, it just seems like, and we can agree that he was wise, if nothing else.
He was a wise farmer.
Wise.
And so was so many beings just like him.
Sure.
Have been, and we can be just like him, and we can be wise sowers, or we can be busy, unwise sowers. It's up to you. Here's to freedom.
Que sera, sera. Anything goes.
Anything goes when it comes to those. Because pimping ain't easy.
Do you think, okay, so I think you mentioned this earlier. So do you think it's the same as saying you reap what you sow?
Absolutely. You're constantly reaping what you've sown. But then what you're saying is, I'm only experiencing this because of the economy, because of my boss, because of my wife, because of that bumblebee over there. Like, my cat has this huge swollen nose right now. She looks hilarious. Bee got her. We all have and I could be like, those damn bees, how dare they do that to my cat? Or I can be like, oh, look, my cat's learning. My cat's exploring, and bees are exploring cats, and cats are exploring bees. And look at the effect. Look at the experience she's having. She hopefully now knows that bees are not something you want on your nose.
Do you think the law of... I wanted to ask you this. I wanted to ask you, maybe you can answer after I say this, but I'll ask you after I say it. I was looking at it in the terms of we're born, we live, and we die. How does seed time and harvest relate to that? Does it? And well, I'll ask you the question later. It doesn't, and maybe it's not the same thing. But do you think does it apply to that?
Well, for me, I'm not my body.
Both are. It's true that we born, we live, and we die.
No, I don't believe that we're born. I don't believe that we die. I believe that there is a body, a physical body that we're aware of, that our spirit is aware of, and it's like a virtual reality sort of feedback loop for us to have this experience here. I don't believe you die. I believe you lay the body down. The body returns to its physical.
Okay, so the body is born, it lives. And then it dies.
Yes.
So does the seed time and harvest apply to the body then?
Yeah, because the body is a communication device. So whatever seeds you're bringing into your consciousness, you're communicating to your cells. This is why so many people one of my favorite definitions I've heard of cancer is cancer in a meta sense is unfinished business. That many times that we have dis-ease in our bodies because we are judging ourselves and others, and we're literally communicating to the cellular structure in the body disturbance. And so food's not getting processed, nutrients aren't getting into the bloodstream. The whole system it's overwhelmed and overstimulated, and it's not functioning properly because of what we're holding in consciousness.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was just reading an article about cancer and this technique they're applying to it, like a Darwinism technique and game theory. And the guy says that he thinks that instead of totally rooting out cancer, you can mitigate it and live just as long. And it was very fascinating, actually. It's funny you bring that up. It was really interesting because his theory was that they're all fighting. The good cells are fighting for this, and the bad cells are fighting for it. And this guy thought that what happens is like other things like mosquitoes become averse to the poisons after a while, and then they grow even more. He thought the same theory in cancer might hold true. So that if you do the really harsh medicine, but not all the time, you might extend the life of the person indefinitely. Fascinating, right? Totally different approach, right? And I might be off topic. But I wanted to ask you, this brings up a lot more questions, but does John Crouch get happy when he sees a baby being born?
No. Pretty gross.
Doesn't bring you joy to see a little baby.
Do I recognize the joy of a life?
Or do you see another unfortunate member of the masses who's going to be hurt by judgment?
I mean, I wept like a baby. There was no the experience that I allowed myself to have at the birth of Isabella and Cole. I haven't been to any other births. I've been around people with newborns, and I can say that I bring joy to the experience, but the experience itself is neutral to me. What I bring to it is the joy of looking at, hey, there's another beautiful being that's dropped into consciousness.
You won't allow. See, you just won't allow yourself to go past your axiom, and that when my children are born, when I see another child, like today we had babies at the church, and it just brings a smile. It's an outward, something outside that, okay, I chose to let it do all this, right? I made an unconscious decision or whatever. But when my child was born, my children were born, I don't know that I've ever really experienced something quite like that. And I don't know that it was that conscious even, to be honest. I don't know that I was sitting there making a choice to allow that to affect me like it did. It just did. like nothing else. And when I saw this child and it looked like me, it was just, I don't know how to even describe it, And
Same here.
That is an outward, something outside of me that happened, that I was involved in, that elicited a response or
yes, because of your value, because you allowed it to, because you said, I have decided to value and love this whole process of loving my wife, of coming together for Seedtime and Harvest with my wife, hello, and having a child come forth, and then looking at that child and saying, I have already decided to love you. You are, to me, a representation of the love between your mother and I. You are a creation of God's love being made manifest through your mom and I's union with that love. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, there's joy in everything, Brian. I have a great time in my life. I always have interesting conversations. I'm only ever doing what I'm interested in doing. My no is no and my yes is yes. You don't see me trying to start a cult. I'm not trying to get people to worship me. I'm not claiming to be some sort of, guru. I'm just living my life, paying my bills, enjoying my simple, everyday, ordinary experiences, because I know that I am free, that I am safe, and that I am loved. And therefore, I extend freedom and safety and love to others without trying to. There's no effort. I don't have to think at all unless I want to think. I don't have to wonder at all unless I truly want to wonder. I don't have to fix a person who steps into my presence and they're all upset. I just go look at them and I go, I marvel at your ability to be miserable. Well done.
You know what? That's pretty cool that you say all that, because I would agree, but I would say that I marvel in love. To me, love manifests itself in a different way, or maybe I'm just saying it different. When I see somebody doing that, when I see somebody clearly doing that, I see it the same way as you. First of all, I recognize it the same way as you, I think. I see they're letting the outside circumstances control what they're thinking, and it's really only them. And I do see that. And I see it clear. But I immediately go to this place in my heart where it's like, I feel for them. I feel I don't feel like I want to change them. I don't feel like I want to change them. I feel like I want to be helpful in that moment. That's what I feel like. And that is a place of love. I don't look at it like that's what it elicits in me. It doesn't, I don't know that I'm saying it really different than you. I don't know. Maybe I am totally.
And I would imagine that a person talking to me and a person talking to you would come away with the same thing. They would have a unique experience with each of us, but I would imagine that they would have a similar experience of feeling heard, of feeling safe, and of feeling able to really look at what's going on in them.
Do you think, though, but see, that's where the helpful and hurtful thing comes, because I think sometimes it seems a little cold, like the way you say it. And it's okay. It's okay. I'm not saying you've determined that's how it is. It's like, well, you're just, as long as you want to sit in your pity and you want to do all this, then I'm here. That seems a little cold to me. I feel like I would, so that you're saying the person would walk away feeling the same way. If I'm that person and I go and someone tells me that, and then someone says, hey, you know what? I feel for you, man. I'm here. Let's talk it through. Let's go have some coffee and let's discuss this. And let me just.
Well, that's what I do day in and day out. That's I spend hours every day talking to people who are in very difficult situations.
And you do.
And that is the fruit of it. Not everyone. We don't start off. When I do workshops and stuff, it doesn't start off ruthless, but it gets ruthless as we go along, because the level of denial is only going to intensify as people come into more and more contact with what's really going on inside of them. And unless you're willing to hold them and say, hey, you don't have to look at what's coming up in you. You can deny that it's coming up. I'm not here to force you to look, but I won't pretend that you're not saying something different than you're feeling. And people learn to trust you because they know you're not going to judge them, but they also know you're not going to buy into their BS.
I get it. And I think there's a time and place. I think that there's a tact, or let's say, seriously.
I can't hurt anyone. I cannot hurt or
I think you
harm
can.
anyone.
Well, it's them. All right. And in your philosophy, you can't.
Well, then you can see me as harmful and hurtful.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can't.
And that's up to you, right? And that goes back to like what is our motivations then? If our motivation is ultimately it really doesn't matter. It's not in my control. Then it goes back to then why say anything? Because I think you want to help. You want to help people.
Only love can heal. I myself am not the source of love.
What is your desire, John? Then what is your desire? You know, we mentioned there has to be something in you that drives you to do this, to have these camps, there has to be something, otherwise you wouldn't do it.
No, the desire is simply the noticing of love in me rising to extend itself. That's it. So I go, oh, my whole life, I've noticed this desire. I really enjoy talking and discussing and dialogue with people. I really like looking into what's really going on. I can walk into a person's life or into a business and I can see immediately what's going on. I can see the structure, the integrity, all of it, because I've done that for myself. And so when I walk into those situations, the desire is always to say, hey guys, here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm teaching. If you find it useful, awesome. If you don't, bye. That's it.
What's the point of that, though?
I'm trying to convince
what's the point of even saying any of that?
Because that's what love is, Brian. Love offers you what it has taught itself and what it has learned from its teaching.
But love does that to you. It's about you. No, it's about you. Why does other people matter then? Like, why does a business matter at all? Like, why does it matter to walk into it in the first place?
You see that your mind is constantly assuming that if I don't have some motive, that I wouldn't do it.
I think motives are important. I do. But you're sort of saying there's no such thing, I think. I don't know. To me, I think
Desire. Desire is everything. There is nothing in your office right now.
Doesn't desire create, like, motivations? Like, don't you get motivated by anything? Is it possible to be motivated?
Internally motivated, yes. There is movement. I would say movement aided. There is like a rising of a wave. A desire is like a wave that's rising out of the ocean, and it's coming to the shore and it's crackling on the shore. Okay, and I can ride that wave. I can be the wave, and I can feel the wave all at the same time. And so for me, the desire is to constantly create the good, the holy, and the beautiful. The way that I do that, my podcast, other things I'm in the middle of creating right now, doing this with you, the different businesses that I consult with, when I go in, I say, hey, I meet with these people, and they're like, we want your help. And I go, well, first and foremost, you need to know that I'm not going to really help you do anything but become more self-aware. And as you become more self-aware, you're going to know how to help yourself. But then you're going to see that in order to help yourself, a lot of the structures and the hierarchies you have working in this business are no longer going to function the way they do now. And anyone who's hiding behind their structure and is disguising their fear behind their sense of power and authority is not going to like your self-awareness, because you're going to be offering equality. You're going to dismantle the hierarchy, and you're going to show them that you're equal to them in your knowledge of self. And many times what I see, this happens over and over again, is people want things to change, but then they meet the authority figures, and the authority figures say, no, we want you guys to get us better results. Now, if he'll help you do that, we want him to do that. But if he's going to help you see,
but results shouldn't matter overall.
Of course they matter. Of course they matter, because the tree, the fruit, the harvest is a manifestation of the seed. The result is the direct experience of the choice you have made to extend love.
So then when you say all that to a business owner, they say, great. So let's hire this guy because there's no because. There's just
They see the value. They go, oh yes, I see. I want to become.
But the value for a business owner is a better business, better numbers, more employees. Well, I mean, it could be all kinds of things, but that doesn't sound like something you're into.
Oh, absolutely. It's not something I'm causing to happen. That is the fruit of love. The fruit of love is gentleness, kindness, patience, goodness, temperance, and self-control. Yeah. So and love is equality. Love is you are equally a creator as much as I am. Do we want to co-create, or am I telling you what to create?
That sounds good. I still think like from
the guy at the top is saying, this is what I want you to create. I want you to create these results, and I want you to get them at any means necessary. And that to me is not integrity. Integrity is the means and the end are one and the same. You're starting to see that in business. You're starting to see that integrity and
what business do you know one that's kind of exhibits that behavior off the top of your head?
Yes. I know of some local businesses here that each employee is honored and given complete and absolute reign. So one of my favorite ones, it's actually a book. It's called "Turn That Ship Around," and it's a true story of a submarine captain who decided to completely change the structure of how the nuclear subs were managed. And so each of his guys goes before him and says, "Sir, I intend to do this." They're not asking him what to do. They're telling him how they're in real time seeing what's needed and flowing and just bringing to him their intentions. So he's aware, they're aware, and the whole thing is flowing. And it's revolutionized the whole thing. Now they retain their sailors. The whole thing has shifted and changed because one guy was willing to show everyone a model of freedom.
I was going to say, and in the end, the sub sprang a hole and sank to the bottom.
Well, hopefully it leads us to a place where we realize we don't need get to a place we don't need nuclear submarines anymore. We don't need to do it.
I agree with you.
And they all died. Yes, Brian. There's your dark side.
Yeah, there it is. Coming up, man.
I knew you were going to let it out.
We watched the original, or the Avengers, Emily and I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great movie. And in the end, when they all sort of turned to leaves, I'm like, great. You know why I liked the ending of that? Because it was different. It was like, oh, that's the end? Like, I just like things that are different. Like, regardless of the point of it or anything. What's that?
You talking about the one that just came out? Or
No, the one before. We just watched the one before the other night. And at the end, they withered away like whatever leaves or whatever, and we're all like, "Is that the end?" Like, and I was like, "That was awesome," like, and I'm like, just because it was different, like it was like it really was a brilliant way to end the movie, and I didn't really think any deeper than that. I wasn't like grasping any deep truths from it. We kind of just watched it. I thought, wow, that's a great movie. Can't wait to see the next one. They're all going to come back, I'm sure, and all that good stuff. But I just thought it was cool. I wanted to ask you something about the when you were talking about the body earlier. I don't remember what it was, but so
not the body.
So okay, this came to my mind. And we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. That the in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I think that's how it says it. What do you think of that? Do you think that's just like a nice story, or like a?
No, that to me is Christ. So I changed that. In the beginning was God, and God created the Christ, which is what we are, and then the Christ in its freedom can say, I'm not a Christ, I am anti-Christ. And it can experience a sense of separateness from its Christedness, wander off like the prodigal son, go expend its Christedness on anti-Christ type things, and then realize, oh, yeah, this is a journey to nowhere. I've lost my sense of Christ. I feel separate from God. I'm going to choose to return home and allow myself to remember what I am. And that to me is what we're doing.
Yeah, see, that's okay. That's a cool answer. I can't for the life of me ever think that we're all Christ's, and it was in the beginning that way. And I think I was pondering that today a little bit. You know, did the people in the Old Testament before the time of Jesus Christ understand that truth? And
some of them did.
I would know you would say yeah, because you just think it's the truth and it was from the beginning.
Yes.
I think not. I think Christ came and showed us what the Christ was. He is. He was the Christ. The Christ. Showed us how to be that and gave us a target, gave us the ability in showing us. And I think, I think you mentioned it last week where you said he feared, and I thought, I thought about that quite a bit this week. We changed that to temptation. He was tempted. Clearly, he was tempted. But did he fear? And I think, and I asked myself that, and I tried to just honestly, not gleaning it from anybody else, did Christ fear? And I thought there was the one point when he was in the garden, and he said that remove this, like do I have to go through this? And then immediately he says, nevertheless. And you know what? I thought about that. It just hit me today. I thought, because I often ponder that, like what was going on there? Because it doesn't seem like anything else that you see written about him or what he said to me. And I thought, did he have to? From my perspective on all of it, when the Word was made flesh, he was that, not me. He was that. And again, that's my look at it, and that's how I read it, and that's how I believe it. And that's what I've personally gotten to. But I think he had to do that to experience every element of what it is to be human. And he overcame it. He overcame everything, in my opinion. He overcame everything. And you look at it, the way he taught from a place of authority. It was different. His words were different than anything else. I mean, so perfect. And who could make the case that someone else wrote them, or they're not really right, or they're in a different language? Fine, but read them in all the languages. I mean, and it's just perfect. It's like perfect. I don't see that anywhere else in history before him or after him. I just don't. And to me, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. I desire him. I need him. I say it. Need. If I need anything, it's him.
Sure.
And in him is my freedom. In him is the truth. In him is the way. In him, not in me, in him. But I abide in him because he gave me the ability to do it. I know what, John, right. You didn't do that.
How dare you? How dare you? Well, all I would say, Brian, is yes, in your freedom, you have decided that is true, and therefore you experience it that way. And
why can't it be true, though?
It is. Because you're free to see a Savior in Jesus, in anyone you want. There's plenty of people out there praying to so-called living gods on the planet. Look at the Hindus, look at the Buddhists. The Buddha even said, don't make any image of me. It's the most made image on the planet is the image of the Buddha. So
recently he recommended Christ, I think, didn't something? I read something about that.
Well, he was before Christ. He was 550 BC.
Whatever the latest Buddha is.
It would have been, they were great friends. I'm telling you now, but I'm not going to get into that. But all I would say is, look, man, I remember the day I had a one-on-one with Jeshua. I call him Jeshua.
What is that? Tell me, unpack that for a sec. 'Cause you bring that up a lot. And I mean, what's that?
That's what he was called. He was called Jeshua. He wasn't called Jesus.
So, but what is that? Why is that a distinct difference than
that's just how he calls himself. It's like everyone you met was calling me, Joe, not Han, and then you talk to me and I'm
that's
like,
fine. No, I'm not. I'm just wondering why it's because it's a point that you bring up. Like, but what does it matter?
It's like you're saying, hey, it's like you saying, how dad Doug, and I'm like, my dad Doug is great.
But I mean, if we call him Jesus versus Jeshua, are we doing something wrong? Like,
no, you can call.
Is there a difference? I mean, is what I'm asking. Like,
no, it's just my relationship with him. It's Jeshua. He calls me JC.
Fair enough.
I remember I said, did you save me from my sins? And he said, no. That was startling. Did I lose you? Of course I did. Did I lose you?
Just briefly. I got most of what you said.
So, I said, did you save me from my sins? I said, no. What did you do? I saved me from my own. And I'll show you how to see that there's no such thing as sin, because that's what I realized. That's what I proclaimed, is that there's no such thing as sin.
So Jesus saved himself from his own.
From his own sense of sin. He transcended the lie.
Where did he ever have that sense? Like, that's interesting. Where do you think how did he ever have that sense? That's an assumption.
Well, I mean, again, I can't prove any of this. I mean, I was literally he showed me his life from early childhood, from very young. He showed me the whole process, where he went, what he did. He showed me the ins and outs of his entire life. He helped me understand.
Did anyone else ever show you such things? Because he's a special entity. If he did that, like he's yes, I talk to non-physical beings all the time, Brian. I talk to Jeshua, I talk to other beings, but I'm not going to get into that with most people because that freaks people out. People start getting freaked out. Well, it kind of freaks me out what you're saying anyway. So
right, and I'm trying to stay at DEFCON Freak Out 1 and not move up to DEFCON Freak Out 2. So you don't want to join my wife.
All right, good. Yeah, let's freak out later.
Yeah. Angels, the whole nine, brother. They're all in communion with you. You can talk that you want to, especially if they are in the realm of love. They are very accessible and more than happy to communicate with you all the wonderful things they learned and have learned since then. You have a Paul called it a host of, what are they called, witnesses around you that are so supportive and so stoked and so happy to share with you. I mean, one of the ones that I realized early on, one of the preachers that I liked the most was a guy named Jesse Duplantis, because he would tell these stories of going to heaven all the time and these conversations he would have with the different saints and apostles and stuff. And I remember realizing early on, you don't have to go to heaven. I remember
they must have told him some stuff, because he preaches some of that stuff you don't like very much, like don't subscribe to.
Again, they support your perspective, and when you go to them and you say this is true, they'll support you in it. And when you go to them and you say, hey, I'm wondering about this, they are very, very helpful on that sense.
That opens the door to some weird stuff, John. Like you're saying they'll support
it's
you.
As weird as so the person is.
Could it be that you've drawn all these conclusions and then you went to Yeshua and he showed you what you already drew the conclusions? I mean, he kind of just said that. I think maybe that's why I think he's perfect. He's a guy.
Yes, if you want to investigate me from that angle, you will find plenty of evidence for my psychosis.
Yes, I'm sure. I appreciate you anyways. I said this before, John. I said it last week, I think. We're seekers of the truth. We seek the truth, we'll find the truth.
Yes, and Nat King Cole wrote that song about me. Unforgettable.
It's all about you, John.
In every way.
I want to say, right, Myrna? It's all about John.
Yeah. Is it all about me, honey? Always.
It's John 30 on your clock back there.
Exactly. And the only people who know it's all about me know it's all about them. That's how they know it's all about me, because they know that in themselves. And when they realize that, they'll join the All About Me club and become divinely selfish. And I pray they become as divinely selfish as they will allow themselves to be. That they say, I only want to know what God thinks of me, no one else. And you, my friend, if you go all that way, if you say, God, I'm done listening to anyone else's opinion of me. What do you think of me? What do you see me as? My friend, your theologies, your beliefs, all of it will be destroyed. And all you'll be left with is love.
Or it'll be affirmed.
Vast as the ocean.
Hey. Or it'll be affirmed. Sorry. Or it'll be
I wore the shirt just so I could do that tonight.
What is it? It says woke AF. What is the AF?
Woke as farts. Woke as farts. As bad as an ad fart will wake you up. Yes, look. It does not negate your beliefs. It does not negate your ideas of Jesus. Those are all as valid as you want them to be. I'm not telling you can't have those and that you can't have a great time with those. Have them as long as you want. All I'm saying is I don't need them anymore. I don't need any of that anymore. I am loved so completely, so absolutely. There's nothing I can do about it but be loved. And I can try and deny love. I've done it. But I've done it for so long and so completely that I am officially retired. I have exhausted.
I'm with you on that one. I say embrace love. Embrace it always. Embrace it every day. Wallow in it. Bathe in it.
Yes.
Because
you already are. You already are. You are. Love embraces all things and always at all times. You are embraced even if you feel like you're not.
That's the topic for next week. Love.
Okay. Love.
All right. Plain and simple. Love.
Yep. I'm going to see if I can.
Because it all goes back to that. That should be a nice long broadcast, right? Because it all is summed up.
And maybe I'll channel John Lennon for you. I'll let John Lennon.
Hey, what about? I heard a little bit of your talk with here. Let's talk about. I want to see what you have to say about this. I was watching this cool documentary on John Robinson. He's an old blues guy, and they say he went to the crossroads and sold his soul to the devil. It's an interesting. Yeah. It's a new documentary on Netflix, and they say he's part of the 27 Club. I don't know if you heard of that. So like all these people that were like these brilliant artists that died when they were 27, like they call it this 27 Club. And so in his case, like he was this. It's really interesting. I think you'd like it. And there's people like all these rock stars saying what they gleaned from him and his ability. Like he could play like 3 songs in one on a guitar, and influenced so many people. But they say he wasn't good, and then he like went away. He went away, came back a year and a half, and he was this brilliant guitar player. And I thought about that. I'm like, wow, it is interesting in that how people bring this up. But I heard you saying something about Kurt Cobain. He was they brought him up in this documentary, saying how brilliant he was. And I think you would tell Joel or something that he was woke or whatever, #woke, but he died. But he like something overwhelmed him or something happened to him. So like maybe he wasn't really woke. Like he went back to sleep.
He's woke. If you listen to his music, you can see that the guy is onto consensus reality. He's woke in the sense that he understands the human condition is not one to be valued. Yeah. There's nothing beautiful in the human condition other than the opportunity to learn and teach only love.
Why do you think he killed himself?
I think his wife killed him. There's a beautiful documentary about the private eye that Courtney Cobain hired right after he died. And that private eye said, basically, I am absolutely sure that she had him killed.
Listen,
to get money.
You can ask him on one of your walks this week and tell me next week.
If he's available, I'll say, hey, Kurt, if you're available, what's up? He may not be. That's the thing. He may be be in rehab,
Right. Up there. I just think, I thought about it. I think he was a genius, and you could say he was woke, whatever, but I think it kind of makes me think a little bit of that darkness I was mentioning when we wallow in it. I mean, how woke are we really? That's where when I said earlier, to me it seems dangerous. That it made me think of that. It made me think of that here, this guy, okay, maybe he didn't kill himself, but it's still. Does that metaphysic philosophy like that, can it be dangerous? And is maybe other people that were woke that died young, like, or killed themselves? I don't know. I mean, it's something in me says it's dangerous in that regard. Like, and I think what I was alluding to was like throwing stuff out like so easily. because of your wokeness. I think I'm awake, but I don't look at it the same.
Yeah. Well, I would say the most dangerous people out there are the most serious. People who are serious are a danger to themselves, and they're a danger to anyone around them. They're not a danger to me. I survived the 80s. Yeah, you guys can do your thing. Yeah,
all right, John. Hey, I'm gonna let you go, man. It's been a good talk.
All right, man.
It has been.
Good torch service.
A what? Torch service?
Our torch service was awesome.
Oh, twerch. Yeah. I've been thinking about that. I think I might change it. Twerch. I like it.
Yeah.
I do like it. Twerch.
Me too.
All right, my friend.
All right, Twitchers and my friend Brian, I love you, man. I appreciate
All right.
Appreciate this.
Love you, John. Talk soon, all right?
All right.
See ya.